You were never supposed to hear about Timothy Caldwell again, and yet here you are, chasing the echo of a boy. History tried to erase a boy who should have died in 1875, but whose eyes remained wide open for far too long, a boy whose heartbeat defied medical law, whose breath persisted in the absence of life itself, buried once, exhumed twice, and documented ever. The officials who filed his case vanished into obscurity, and the doctors who examined him could not agree whether he was living or merely mimicking it. But this was not about survival. It was about something older and darker than death, something even the grave could not contain. It began in the silence of a farmhouse in Black Hollow, Virginia. His mother awoke to a soundless cry, the kind that does not come from the mouth, but from the walls, from the furniture, from the ground. Timothy had stopped speaking 2 days before. He stopped eating 3 days before that, and yet he continued to grow. The local physician declared it divine. But the Reverend saw something else. When he placed his hand on Timothy's chest, he whispered a psalm, and Timothy bled from both eyes. The town doctor wrote in his private journal a phrase that was never meant to reach another human eye. The child is feeding, but not on food, nor on air. The child is pulling something through us. Through me I feel hollow. I feel inverted. There is a cold in the room when I speak to him, and it answers before I finish. By the 4th week after his apparent death, Timothy was placed in a cedar coffin. Though no one was certain he was gone, when they lowered him into the ground, the birds fell silent and the church bells rang, though no one had touched them. 1 year later, a sound was heard under that same ground, scratching, slow, deliberate, not like panic, but like patience. And when they opened the grave, the coffin lid had cracked from within, and the body was sitting upright, smiling as it had been waiting. You must understand now. This was not resurrection. This was replacement. What came back was not what went in. And even now, as we speak, there are sealed archives beneath Washington containing photographs, notes, and artifacts, none of which have been authorized for public view, because to know this story fully is to unravel a boundary men were never meant to cross, and yet here you are, already across it. There are moments in history where something slips through a crack, not by accident, but because someone opened the door on purpose. And Timothy Caldwell was not an accident. He was a signal, a controlled breach into the known world. And if you think this is about a child with strange biology, then you are still at the surface. This is about the manipulation of life and death, the ownership of identity, and the quiet war that has been fought in secret for centuries, where bodies are vessels and minds are the battlefield. When Timothy was recovered from his grave, the second time a federal agent was present. Not a marshal, not a sheriff, a man with no badge, no name, just a silver ring with a black insignia shaped like an eye within a triangle. He ordered everyone away from the scene. He took the body and every note the town physician had written and promised they would hear back from Washington. No one ever did. But they were being watched, every one of them. And within 6 months, the doctor was found drowned in his own well, with that same insignia carved into the wooden cover. The mother was taken next. They said she left town, but witnesses claimed she was escorted in a covered wagon that bore no markings. Her screams were heard for miles, not of pain, but of something worse, pleading not for her life, but for her memory to be erased. She did not want to remember what she had birthed. She did not want to carry the echo of whatever had worn her son's skin, and stared back with hollow patience from beneath the soil. What was Timothy Caldwell if not a prototype, a vessel born in flesh, but claimed by something else, something old and indifferent, and precisely engineered for infiltration? Every town has legends of changelings, doppelgangers, spirits who wear the faces of the dead. But this was different. This was procedural. This was measured. Someone was watching. Someone was testing. And the boy was phase 1. We like to believe we are protected by science, by medicine, by logic. But those things were designed after the fact, built like fences, around what they could not explain. And Timothy slipped through before those fences were finished, and now he is a part of something larger, a presence that does not knock, it waits. It does not force entry. It is welcomed by the naive and the curious, and the ones like you, who cannot look away. By the winter of 1876, reports began to surface from nearby counties. Not just whispers of a boy returned from the dead, but sightings of children who did not blink, who did not sleep, who stood motionless at the edges of cornfields and stared at nothing. For hours. These children were always alone, and they were always found in the morning, without footprints in the snow, without names, without histories. The locals called them watchers, but they bore the same expression Timothy Caldwell wore, in that exhumed coffin, an expression that did not belong to a child. The presence was spreading not like a disease, but like a pattern repeating itself with subtle variations, learning, adapting, refining, and those who tried to trace it found their own thoughts, bending memories, twisting as if something was rewriting their perception in real time. The phenomenon was not just biological, it was psychological, a force that rearranged belief systems, stripped identity, and inserted silence in its place. And in the silence came the symbols carved into barn doors, into tree trunks, into bedroom walls, a triangle, an eye, a crooked number 7, always burned into the wood, always too perfect to be done by hand. Men were sent from Washington again, not in uniform, not with names. Just letters sewn into their coats and pale faces that did not speak in full sentences. They confiscated the drawings taken from the local schoolhouse, where a 7-year-old girl had drawn Timothy's face in crayon over and over again. And when asked who he was, she whispered one word before she began to convulse open, and it was not a name. It was an instruction. The child survived, but her mind did not, and the drawing was classified under a file marked resonance theory, which was later banned from all military experimentation. The theory stated that certain visual patterns could activate dormant regions of the human mind, connecting it to something reverbal preconscious, and that Timothy Caldwell's face was one such pattern, not a likeness, but a code, a key designed to open not doors, but people. You must understand now, this is no longer about Virginia. This is about what came through him and why. And the deeper you go, the more you begin to see the scaffolding beneath reality, the lines that shape behavior, the invisible script you have been reading since birth. And Timothy was never the anomaly. He was the blueprint, the glitch that revealed the architecture behind the lie. And now that you know it, you can never unsee it. The deeper you descend into this story, the more you begin to feel it breathing behind your thoughts. Like something is watching, not from the shadows, but from inside the space between your memories. And it wants you to believe this was just about a strange boy in a forgotten town. But no strange child draws federal agents. No local death bends time and space, unless it touches something sacred or forbidden, or both. And Timothy Caldwell was both a warning and an invitation. The town records show something impossible. In the spring of 1877, 13 babies were born within the same 3-week window each, to different mothers, none of whom were pregnant a month prior. No swelling, no morning sickness, no signs. And then, one morning, they all gave birth at home in silence. And when the midwives came to document the miracle, not one mother remembered the delivery. Not one could describe the face of their child. and each child bore the same birthmark beneath the tongue, a symbol not seen since the temple walls of Mesopotamia. A serpent swallowing its own tail, the church declared it an act of God. The doctors called it mass hysteria. But the town was silent, too silent, and by autumn 11 of the children were gone. Vanished from locked rooms, empty cribs, no broken windows, no tracks, and the two that remained never aged, not a day, not a wrinkle in the skin, not a new tooth or changed behavior. They sat in their chairs and watched, whoever entered with that same cold patience Timothy once held in his unblinking stare. Some said the children were seeds, that the event was not a miracle, but a harvest, and the town was soil for something deeper, darker, more ancient than any religion dared name, and those who tried to leave the town met with strange accidents. Wagons shattered horses, panicked rivers flooded paths, vanished on maps, and one man who made it out was found years later, blind with carvings on his eyelids, saying, "I saw him twice." You feel it now, don't you? This isn't just a story. It's an echo, one that resonates across time, across minds, a pattern seeking fertile ground in the curious. The discontent. The ones who ask questions, not because they want answers, but because they already know something is wrong, and they need to feel the shape of it in their hands. So listen carefully, because this isn't about Timothy anymore. It's about what entered our world through him, and what it's still looking for in men like you. The final letter ever written by Reverend Elijah Granger was never delivered. It was found sealed inside the hollow wall of the Caldwell church, decades later, wrapped in oilskin stitched shut with hair from his own beard, and marked with the words, "Do not read aloud." The contents were never printed, never archived, officially, never released to the public. But one man who transcribed the letter in secret would later disappear after claiming the text was alive, that the more he read it, the more it read him, and that each sentence restructured his dreams into warnings, not words. The letter speaks of a ritual one the Reverend did not perform, but witnessed, hidden beneath the floorboards of the chapel during the third week of Lent, 1877. He described 7 robed figures, none from the town, chanting in reverse with their palms flat on the earth, and in the center of their circle sat the child, Timothy Caldwell. Not breathing, not moving, but his eyes were open, glowing faintly blue, and above him, suspended by nothing, hung a mass of shadow like a cocoon, made of voices echoing from the walls, in languages the Reverend could not name. And then the cocoon spoke not in sound, but in feeling. Every man present dropped to his knees, as if gravity had multiplied, and their mouths opened against their will, and began to repeat a single phrase over and over. He wrote it phonetically, not understanding it, and when translated by a forbidden language researcher in 1932, it meant, "The boy is the gate and not the key." If that sounds like madness to you, that is the reaction it wants. Because madness is the mask it wears to remain untouched by science and unreachable by reason. But if you hear it clearly, if you sit with it quietly, you will feel the same pull. The Reverend felt a presence not just beneath the church, but beneath the world, as if our entire reality is a crust, hiding something ancient, seething, and sentient, and hungry. From that night onward, the Reverend never preached again. He locked the chapel doors, threw the key into the river, and was found months later with every mirror in his home broken, and the phrase, "No reflection is safe," carved into the walls with his own fingernails, not bloodied, but blackened, as if he had touched something electric, something divine, something forbidden. And still, Timothy remained unchanged, sitting in his bed, eyes open, never sleeping, never blinking, watching something none of us were ever meant to see, something that might already be looking back at you through this screen. In the winter of 1878, the snows came early and thick, blanketing the town of Providence Hollow in silence and sealing off every road out of the valley. For 7 straight weeks, it was during this time that the town's clocks stopped, not all at once, but one by one. First the chapel, then the post office, then the schoolhouse, until not a single ticking sound could be heard anywhere in the town. And with each silence came something stranger, a shifting in shadows that did not align with the sun, a chorus of whispers beneath the ice, and a cold that felt aware. Families began reporting dreams, identical in detail, vivid in pain, each describing an ocean made of teeth where children sang in reverse, and the moon had veins and pulsed like a beating heart. And at the center always stood Timothy, not as a boy, but as a silhouette made of smoke, stretching far beyond the sky, eyes that flickered like dying stars, and a voice that spoke without sound, saying, "You are inside me now." Those who dreamt it began to change. They forgot the names of loved ones, turned mirrors to face the wall-covered windows with soot. They said it was to keep the light out, but there was no light, only a gray that never shifted, no matter the hour, as if time itself had been pinned like a dead butterfly in the air above them. Some tried to leave, walking into the forest, but never returned, and the ones who stayed began to gather nightly around the Caldwell home, their mouths stitched shut with thread, not by force, but by choice. One woman, Ms. Lenora Bishop, was the only person to write during that time. Her journal speaks of a ritual she did not understand, performed by townsfolk who no longer blinked. They gathered around Timothy, each holding an object from their childhood, a toy, a key, a single glove, and one by one they dropped these into a box that Timothy held, and with each item the wind outside howled louder until the windows shook and seized. The stars overhead blinked out as if swallowed. Then came the voice, not from Timothy, but from the box itself, and it said one word in the voice of every person who had ever died in that valley: return. And as they did, their eyes glazed white and their mouths opened wide in silence. And for one moment, all the clocks in town ticked once, in perfect unison, then stopped forever. You are not just listening to history. You are brushing against the edge of something older, something that demands to be remembered, not with facts, but with fear, with that cold feeling in your spine that you are not alone and never have been. Years later, Providence Hollow was abandoned. The remaining few scattered away, leaving behind empty houses with windows like hollow eyes and streets that twisted like broken bones. The Caldwell home still stood, though its walls were blackened and its door hung crooked on rusty hinges. Locals spoke of strange lights flickering there at night, shadows moving like whispers, and a low humming sound that echoed through the valley like a warning or a prayer. Occasionally, travelers brave or foolish enough to camp nearby reported waking to find small objects placed around their tents, tokens carved from bone and wood with symbols no one could decipher, and the air thick with a scent neither of earth nor fire, but something older, colder, as if the valley itself was breathing, watching, waiting. Folklore grew from the silence, some claimed. Timothy Caldwell was not a man, but a curse, born from the valley itself, a collector of souls bound by a promise, written in blood and madness. Others whispered he was a guardian, trapped between worlds, forced to remind humanity of the darkness lurking beneath civility and law. Whatever the truth, the story endures, a warning cloaked in myth about the dangers of tampering with the fragile threads of human nature and the price paid when curiosity turns to cruelty and science to horror. Providence Hollow remains on maps, only as a ghost town, But if you listen carefully on a still night, you might hear the faint ticking of clocks that have long stopped, and the echoes of a voice whispering questions no one wants to answer. What does it mean to be human? What lies beyond the limits of empathy and reason? And are we truly alone in our darkest fears? That concludes the story of Timothy Caldwell and the chilling legacy he left behind, a tale that intertwines psychology mystery and the darkest corners of human nature. If you found this story gripping, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more dark historical mysteries that will keep you questioning what lies beneath the surface of our past. Stay curious and stay safe until next time.